This is stage 1 of the development process, and this deals with the actual fabrication of the initial images before they're put into Flash. To start off with, we have the initial canvas that I used, and I slowly built it up, following along with my sketches, which you can see in the previous information. First ones I came up with, something like this. Turn on the layers. You can see that there was the initial outline, which was quite blurred, and it followed all the different layers that I have on my sketches, which is to say you have the toolbar, which is where the actual editing functions were going to be, search bar, then your relevant contacts that you can sort through, previous emails in the large section, a section for the actual content of the email, and then any extra information such as writing or any attachments. And the arrows were there to scroll with, much like the scroll bar on the right hand side here. But what I decided with this is that aside from everything else, the lines, if you can see them, are far too curved, and it has a very childish look to it, which was something that, although I put in the sketches, didn't really suit when I was going through things. So I came up with version 2. You just get the quick comparison of the two, with outline 1 and the test on, compared to this one. You can see the actual rounding of the edges up here. It starts off very rounded. As that closes down, opens up the second one. Oops. You can see that everything's much more squared out. The gaps on this side are very thick for the larger headings. The gaps on the left hand side are very thin for less headings. And I also changed the actual background, because I found that with coloured backgrounds, such as this, that it tended to fade too much. You couldn't actually tell where it began and ended. So what I did was I just unsmoothed it and get a very solid edge, so that you can tell that it's there. Yes, you can see through to the background, which was the whole point of the transparency, so that users could use this as if it was a program on top of something, and still see what they were looking at below, which is the whole point of this test image. But they still know this is a program in itself. It's not meant to be like a widget or a gadget in the bottom corner of the screen. I'll go through to one of my other backgrounds. That's the black one. This was the email viewer. Now, the main changes compared to the previous ones were the icon bars up here. Originally it was going to be edit functions, but I've decided since then that the editing functions for writing emails will be down this section, and they get to be put in. I'll show you those later on. And the actual buttons up here now correspond to the 5 different sides of the project. Rather than having the cubed theme, which was present throughout all my research planning-wise, where you would rotate around in a square, you'd now click on these buttons in Flash and they will do your different functions. So you've got the email client, the messenger client, the photo viewer, text editor, and then a settings button which pops up another window on top. Relating to the sketches, you can see that I tried to follow them. You can see it popping up and down. I tried to follow them as exactly as I could. I added a few more buttons because I found at the time I didn't know how many buttons I was going to need. And all the different content areas don't have the content put in because it's dynamic. It's going to be part of the actual storyline. It's something that's going to be talked about more in the coding segments. Looking through to the other more detailed ones, we have the messenger client. And notice I keep the background the same throughout all of them. And the messenger client has the main sections being this one on the left, which is going to be where all the contacts are listed. Again, you got little tiny arrows at the bottom just to scroll through if there's any more information. The content areas, and I tried again to keep to the sketches as best as I could, so that you can see you've got the different chat areas, the emotion areas, which I talk about in my research, where the user will type and then store the information as it's clicked based on what the emotion are. So you can't just click enter to return. You have to click on an emotion, so that I can control the responses the user gets from the person they're speaking to based on the emotion that's being clicked. Turn that off again. And all of these, if you can see, are all organised into separate folders, drop-down menus. And one thing that's here that's an extra feature is you've got these little buttons here. This one being a text edit function, which is what will be on the email as well. Let me just turn this on so you can see. There we go. So this is just the basic functions. You've got bold, italic, underline, heading, font, cut, paste, cut, copy, paste. Then you've got increased text size and reduced text size. The whole point being that you can edit all your functions from this one screen still. And this is something I use throughout all the areas where you have to be able to type. Again, the emotion bar here, the way that works is you have the squares, all small squares, and as you mouse over them and move them towards the center, they enlarge. So if you were to move further to the right, this bigger one would shrink and go to the right, whereas this one here would move towards the middle and enlarge as it goes. Another one of the key features that I've used in other areas. Let's turn off the messenger. We have next the image viewer. Now for the image viewer, it's best seen with some content, because the others where their content's more dynamic, it's all text based, there wasn't really any need to put it in. But this one, it's largely to do with what you actually see. Just go down here and turn it on. There you go, you see a photo put in, one from my collection, which will be put in as part of the content anyway. Again, the emotion bar is taken here and is now used for images of the photographs instead. So the user cycles around with little mouse overs for the names of the photographs as they go, and they can cycle through all the photographs they've got stored. If I wanted it, there's the function for a little nameplate that appears just up here where the mouse is. So again, the name's visible all the time. I haven't quite decided yet if that's going to be a feature throughout or if that's going to be something that's going to be turned on or turned off. These arrows are used to just signify where the user puts their mouse. So it's going to be all motion sensitive rather than clicking. And the toolbar at the top, the icons, they're there again throughout everything. Another key part of this is that you might want to see the transparencies, because I've made it so that the transparencies are everything. Content that is going to be viewed and needs to be viewed through the program, like the photographs, they're completely solid. And again, for the little photographs down the bottom. But things that are part of the program itself that aren't relevant to your viewing, such as the toolbars, they're all clear, so you can still see the contents behind, because I'm still debating whether or not that's something I want to use. And plus that works with the backgrounds that I've chosen to use. But this is the final background that I've decided to go with as my initial starting background. It's not too overpowering, and I'll talk more about that in a second. If we then close down the image viewer, and then, I'll show you the first with the sketch. With the sketch on top, you can see that again I've kept it as close to the sketch as I could. The only real change being that the icon bars have been moved to the center. Originally I tried to keep it the same on everything, like United branding, but I decided partway through that it was more important to have the content, the icon bars available to everyone in the middle, so it's on the main area you're looking, it's central to your vision, just so it's not too distracting, and yeah, it's always available. Close down the image. We got the text editor. Oops, there we go. Key features here, the edit bar is always active here. You can always see it. And you've got the icons at the top. Now these are there so that users, again, can navigate through everything else. The main part of this is the slider bar. You can slide up and down, or will be able to read the rest of the document you're looking at. I'm not quite sure how I was going to control what people view. I think I was going to use this button up here, which acts as a search feature in the other areas of the program. In this, it acts as a like a drop-down file listing of anything that you've got stored into the program's memory, which means that I can control the content the viewers look at. Looking at the sketch, you can see that I've changed it a fair bit in that the icons are now central, which meant that the text editing functions had to be pushed down underneath, which is where they've been put. If we just activate the content for this, again it's something where the content is quite important. Let's see if I can find it again. Here we are. We go, text. The actual text itself is there so that you can see and cycle through everything as you need it. This is part of one of the essays that will be in the final piece when it's actually developed. But for now, it's just there as an image. It wasn't too important. I'll leave this open for now just to talk about the background briefly. I went through quite a few backgrounds, as you can see. I'll just open them all up so you can have a look at all of them. I initially started off with the black, and then I started using this kind of test background colour, just basically to show my transparency on all my test images. I then went through and was testing out different ideas of colour and gradients and how I can get something that looks a lot like the Apple Mac backgrounds you can see on my background, so that it's colour, but it's something that's going to be pleasing to the eye, so it's going to match with the rest of the work that I'm using. So I went from the harsh lines, something that was completely flat images. It's colours that blend completely. But I felt it was still something I might use, but it clashed too much with the icon colours, because without those colours it's a very bland piece of work. I just take off on the text so you can see. I just take off the icons overlays. You can see that it becomes instantly very dark, which is up there. Whereas if you turn the overlays back on, it gives that hint of colour. And it's something where you don't really want to have the background conflicting. You want people to be able to focus on the differentiation between them. So it's there, and it's an additional piece of work, but it doesn't try and take over your screen, which is where I decided to stick with this one. The greens and the blues are completely at odds to the other colours that I've used. So it's something that's going to lend itself well because it's almost pale colours. As well as with the lines, you can see that it actually shows through the work, but it doesn't try and take over, which means that if I've got other things in the background, then it's quite pleasing. Plus it's very relaxing as well. If people are going to be looking at my work for quite some time, then it's going to help. If there's something, it's not going to be very harsh on the eyes. The last feature to talk about is the buttons. All the icons are made by myself. I've got a few displays up here. This one of the initial ones, I'll minimise that down. This initial one was originally a photograph, the one that you see in the image viewer. All it had some image effects done in it to control the colour and some liquid eye effects. Liquid eye, one of the filters, one of the blur filters, I think it was a Gaussian. Just to take it down so it's not able to be seen what it is, but it still looks like a photograph. And then that was all done in this size images, was copied and pasted in and then shrunk down. The same for the settings button and for the copy buttons. What I found was it was easier to make them large like this. I mean, the actual text on this is a proper layer. You can transform it and you can see that it is actually proper text. I just shrunk it down. And it's something that made my life a lot easier, making them larger and shrinking them down. And these are all backed up as well and stored. I've got a few other images here just to quickly show. This is what it originally started off as, was this one. So you can see that it was the blurring, blending in, as well as you've got the black at the top. Now the black bit at the top was very rounded and it didn't really have a function at this point. I hadn't decided, and I thought maybe they were going to be my edit buttons, so I needed a way to tab between different programs you had open. So I came up with the tabbed feature in the background. Now what this was is you would mouse over the tabs and then you'd go to different areas, which would lead to images like this, where you'd mouse over a tab and it'd be the content you was looking at. But this did look very, very childish, and I really didn't want to have to use it. So I decided against it and moved into the style you see here. Everything's much more squared off. This is actually an early image as well, so things are slightly darker around the edges. Because the transparencies are something I've been playing with constantly to try and get them just perfect. And again, the icons here are the new way of navigating around. All of these that's left to do is to take the images that are here as icons and actually put them separately, because at the moment those overlays are a separate layer for everything, and make them so that every button can have its overview and its hip view, so that in Flash it actually has some kind of motion to it. And then I'll be making those as and when they're needed in Flash, and I'll make another documentation once the Flash coding has begun underway. Thank you very much.